The sun burned over the dusty market of Zareen 5, a strange alien world where humans were still rare to see. Shops lined both sides of the narrow street, filled with glowing fruits, metal parts, and creatures in cages. Crowds pushed and shouted, aliens of all shapes and sizes. Trading, stealing, begging, surviving. Jason, a human traveler, walked slowly through the market, his bag slung over one shoulder. Eyes tired, he wasn't here for business or adventure. He was just passing through, trying to forget the past. He reached for a strange red fruit at a stall, but just then a sound stopped him. A soft voice behind him cried, "Please marry my mom, human." Jason froze, hand still reaching forward. He turned slowly, heart suddenly heavy, unsure if he heard right. And there she was, a little alien girl no older than 7, skin soft and pale with a faint lavender glow. Her eyes shimmered like crystal water, and her clothes were torn and patched. Behind her stood a woman, tall, tired and beautiful in a broken way. Her long silver hair was braided in a messy twist. Her clothes simple but clean. She didn't speak, only looked down at the ground, ashamed. The girl took a step forward and said louder, "Please be her husband. She's kind and she's all alone." The crowd turned to look. Some chuckled, others whispered. Jason felt the air change, eyes now on him. Judging, curious, he knelt slowly to the girl's level. "Why are you asking me that?" he asked gently. The girl's lip trembled. "Because no one wants us and she cries at night. And she's still kind to me even when she's hungry." Jason looked past her to the woman, who finally raised her head. Their eyes met, and Jason saw the truth in them. Years of sadness, quiet strength, and something deeper. Pain that never left and hope that refused to die. He stood up slowly, unsure what to do. The woman finally spoke, voice soft like a breeze. "I'm sorry, I told her not to speak. She didn't listen." Jason shook his head. "Don't apologize." He looked around. The other aliens were still watching, and some were clearly mocking the scene. One vendor laughed. Another cursed widow trying to catch a human. How pathetic. Jason didn't like the word cursed. "What do you mean cursed?" he asked the vendor. The man spat on the ground. "She loved a human once, he died, and now her people think she's poison. No one helps her." Jason turned back to the woman, shocked. "You loved a human?" She nodded slowly. "Long ago, when the war ended, he stayed behind. He was kind to me. Then he was taken." Jason didn't ask what she meant by taken. The pain in her eyes said enough. The girl tugged his sleeve. "Please, we don't need much. Just food. And maybe a roof." Jason looked down at her, then at her mother again. He wasn't rich, wasn't a hero, and wasn't planning to stay, but something deep inside him stirred. Memories of his own mother, hungry and alone. Memories of promises he made to never ignore someone in need again. He sighed, rubbed his face, and looked back at the woman. "What's your name?" She blinked, surprised. "Yulari." "And hers?" "Lena." Jason gave a tired smile. "All right, Yulari, Lena. I'll get you something to eat and we'll find a place to talk." The girl clapped, hugging his leg. Thank you. Yulari stood still, tears forming in her eyes but refusing to fall. Jason led them through the crowd, ignoring the whispers. Behind him, the two followed, one holding his hand, the other walking a few steps behind, unsure but hopeful. That night, under a quiet roof in a tiny room above a shop, they sat together for the first time, and as Lena ate her first full meal in days, and Yulari quietly fixed her daughter's hair, Jason realized. Maybe he wasn't just passing through after all. Something had begun, something he didn't understand yet. But one thing was clear. The girl's cry in the market had changed everything. The room was small but warm. The smell of cooked grain and glowing fruit filled the air. Lena was already asleep on a thin mat beside the corner light, wrapped in a borrowed blanket. Jason sat by the window, his boots off, arms resting on his knees, staring at the stars above Zareen 5. Yulari sat across from him, silent, holding a cup of tea she hadn't touched. The silence between them wasn't heavy. It was waiting, like a story too painful to tell but too important to hide. Jason finally broke the silence. "She's strong." "Lena?" Yulari smiled gently. "She is." Her voice was soft but tired, like someone who had learned not to speak unless necessary. Jason watched her quietly. "You said you loved a human before?" She nodded, her hands tightening around the cup. "Yes." Years ago, she looked out the window, the stars reflecting in her eyes. His name was Darren. He was a soldier left behind after the war, she began. He didn't want to fight anymore. He wanted peace. Wanted to learn our ways, and at first I was afraid of him. But he helped rebuild the broken farms, taught our children, and never once raised his hand. Jason listened. Letting her talk at her own pace, Yalari's voice grew warmer as she remembered. He brought us water when the wells ran dry, and he fixed machines no one else could. But then, she whispered, he chose to love me. Jason leaned forward slightly. That was forbidden? She nodded, her eyes now distant. The elders hated it, said it was betrayal, that I had let my heart become infected with outsider weakness. They warned me, threatened me, but I stayed by him. I didn't care what they said, and one day, he disappeared. Her hands trembled. They said it was a desert beast, but no body was found, no blood, no tracks. She looked at Jason now, and there was something hollow in her gaze. I knew it was them. They made him vanish. Jason felt a chill, not from cold, but from anger. How could they do that and still walk free? He asked quietly. Yalari shook her head. Because no one speaks against the elders, and because I was cursed from then on. They told the village I had brought bad luck, that my womb would bear no sons, that I had insulted the ancestors. She looked toward Lena, sleeping peacefully. But I had her, and for a time, she was my light. Jason watched her carefully, noticing the way her shoulders sagged as if carrying the weight of too many years. No one helped you since then? Yalari smiled sadly. Sometimes a stranger would give a coin or a meal, but no one stayed. No one wanted to be seen near me. They feared being cursed too. Even now, I clean floors in a warehouse by night and pick scraps by day. Jason clenched his jaw. And Lena? She goes with you? She hides nearby while I work or begs in the alleys, Yalari admitted quietly. She always comes back, even when she's empty. Jason stood up and walked over to the small shelf, grabbing a sealed food pack from his bag. He handed it to her. Eat. She hesitated. But this is yours. I'm not hungry, he said firmly. And even if I was, you need it more. Tears shimmered in her eyes. But she took the pack and opened it slowly. She ate without noise, with quiet dignity, like someone who had learned to survive without asking. Jason sat down again, leaning back. You said they call you cursed, but you've survived more than most people I've met. Yalari looked at him surprised. You don't think I'm broken? Jason shook his head. I think you're stronger than you know. He looked at Lena, sleeping soundly. Her small fingers curled like petals. Your daughter's smile is proof you did something right. There was a long pause. And then Yalari whispered, Why are you helping us? Jason looked down. Because once, long ago, someone helped me and my mother when no one else did. She had nothing. Just like you. And someone gave us food, a roof, and a second chance. I never saw that man again, but I promised myself I'd do the same if I ever could. Yalari placed the empty pack aside. Her eyes filled with something new, hope. Thank you, Jason, she said softly. He gave a small nod. Just rest tonight, we'll talk tomorrow. As she lay beside her daughter, Jason returned to the window. Outside, the stars kept glowing, cold and distant. But inside that room, something warm had started to grow. Not love, not yet, but trust. And for a woman who had been called cursed, that trust felt like the first miracle. Morning light slipped through the small window. Soft and golden, Jason opened his eyes slowly. Still not used to the strange colors of Zareen 5's sunrise, he sat up, rubbing his eyes, and looked around the tiny room. Lena was still sleeping, curled against her mother, who lay quietly beside her. Yalari's arms wrapped around her daughter like a shield. Jason didn't move, he just watched, something about the scene pulling at his heart. For a moment it felt peaceful. For a moment it felt like family. But reality came back fast. This was temporary. They still had no future, no real safety. Jason stood and walked outside into the alley, his boots crunching on the dusty ground. The shopkeeper downstairs, an old three-eyed alien named Gorik, stood sweeping his steps. You still with that widow and her runt? Gorik sneered without looking up. Jason didn't respond, just stared him down until the alien shifted nervously. She's cursed, human. You'll bring trouble to yourself. Jason's voice was low. Calm. Maybe I'm used to trouble. Later that morning, Yalari and Lena sat quietly as Jason returned with a small bag of warm food. Fresh bread, soft fruit, and a single pouch of clean water. Lena's eyes lit up, and for the first time, Jason saw her smile wide. She rushed to hug him, but stopped just short, unsure. Jason knelt and handed her the bread. "It's okay," he said. "Go on, eat." She took it and ran to the mat. Chewing with pure joy, Yalari stood slowly, her voice low. "We can't stay here long," Jason nodded. "I know." She looked away. "I don't want people talking about you, thinking—" "I don't care what they think," Jason cut in. "I care about what happens to you two." She hesitated. "Then what do we do?" Jason took a breath, thinking hard. "There's a small area on the edge of the sector. A broken farm. No one goes there anymore. I saw it on the way in. It's abandoned." Her eyes widened slightly. "That place is cursed too." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Or maybe it's just empty." He spent the rest of the day finding tools and supplies from travelers who didn't ask questions. With a few credits and some favors, he got a solar lamp, old blankets, a rusty cooking plate, and dried food by sunset. They stood before the old farm, surrounded by overgrown weeds and broken walls. Lena clung to her mother's hand, unsure. Jason pushed open the door with his shoulder. It creaked but didn't fall. Dust danced in the fading light, but the space was large and safe. It would need cleaning, repairs, but it was theirs. No eyes, no whispers, no cruelty. Yalari ran her hand along the wall. "I never thought anyone would do this for us," Jason shrugged, pretending not to care. "It's just shelter." But she knew, and he knew it was more than that night. They lit the solar lamp, and Lena sang softly while folding her new blanket. Yalari cooked a simple meal from the dried food, barely anything, but it smelled like home. Jason sat near the entrance, watching the stars again, listening to them talk. Lena looked up, holding a half-eaten fruit. "Are you going to leave soon?" Jason blinked, caught off guard. "Why do you ask?" "Because everyone does," she said simply, like it was a normal truth. Jason didn't answer right away. He looked at Yalari, who lowered her gaze, pretending not to listen. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I'll stay as long as I'm needed." Lena nodded, as if that was enough for now. Later, when Lena fell asleep, Yalari came to sit beside Jason by the door. The desert wind was cool, brushing against them like a whisper. She spoke first. "You don't have to keep doing this," Jason looked at her. "Doing what?" "Helping, staying, feeding us." He shook his head slowly. "I'm not doing it out of pity." She nodded but said nothing. After a long silence, she asked quietly, "What do humans think of women like me?" Jason blinked, surprised by the question. "What do you mean?" "Widowed, poor, broken, cursed by her own people," she said bitterly. Jason turned to her fully. "I think they would call you strong." Her eyes met his, and he saw something flicker. Pain, yes, but something more. Hope, maybe, or something close to it. "I'll fix the roof tomorrow," he said, changing the subject. "There's a hole near the back room. Might leak if it rains." Yalari gave a quiet smile. "We haven't had anyone fix anything in years." Jason smiled back. "Then we're long overdue." That night, under a broken roof in a house no one wanted, a widow and a stranger sat side by side, and without saying it, without needing to say it, they both felt it. This place was not just a shelter. It was a beginning. The next morning, the sky over Zareen 5 turned a pale purple. Bird-like creatures flew low, and dust swirled through the broken streets. Inside the old farmhouse, Jason hammered a wooden panel into the roof. Sweat rolled down his face, and his hands were full of splinters, but he didn't stop, not even when his back ached. Below, Lena laughed as she chased a glowing bug around the small yard. Yalari watched her daughter from the doorway, her eyes shining with something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. But peace never lasts long on a planet like this. By mid-afternoon, a group of villagers stood near the edge of the property. 6 aliens, dressed in rough clothes, whispering and pointing at the house. Jason noticed them first. Wiping his forehead as he climbed down, Yalari followed his gaze, her expression shifting quickly to fear. "They've come to warn us," she whispered. "Or worse." Jason walked toward them slowly, calm but firm. A tall, gray-skinned alien stepped forward, arms crossed. "This land is cursed, human. You shouldn't be here," he said. Jason didn't flinch. It was abandoned. No one wanted it. The alien scowled. "That's because the widow touched it." He looked past Jason at Yalari. "She spreads bad luck everywhere she goes." Jason's voice was steady. "All I've seen is a mother working to protect her child," another villager muttered. "She used her daughter to trap you." That's what cursed women do. Yulari stepped forward, trembling but proud. I never begged for anything. My daughter spoke from hunger, not from a plan. The villagers ignored her. Turning back to Jason. You can still leave, human. Before the shame touches you too. Jason looked them in the eyes. One by one, I'm not leaving, he said. And if you think fear will make me run, you picked the wrong species. They left soon after, but the damage was done by nightfall. Someone threw rotten food at the farm door the next day. A message was burned into the fence. Leave with the cursed. Jason patched the hole silently. Anger burning in his chest, Yulari said nothing. But her shoulders slumped deeper each day. Even Lena noticed, growing quiet, her laugh fading. Jason knew they couldn't keep hiding forever. That evening, he walked into the village center. Eyes followed him from every corner, suspicious, judging, some even afraid. He found the old market stall where he first met Lena. The vendor from before saw him and sneered. Still playing house with the cursed one? Jason walked up close, placing a few credits on the table. Do you ever get tired of hating people you don't understand? The vendor paused, caught off guard. What do you mean? Jason leaned in. I mean, maybe if you tried helping someone once, you'd feel less empty. He turned and left. Not waiting for a reply as he passed the crowd, he saw a few younger aliens whispering, not with hate but with curiosity. He saw a couple of women watching Yulari from a distance, and something in their eyes looked like guilt. Maybe the village wasn't made of pure stone. Maybe cracks had begun to form back at the farm. He found Yulari sitting outside. Staring at a broken toy in her hand, he sat beside her. We can leave if you want. She looked up. Surprised. You'd still come with us? Jason nodded. This isn't just your fight anymore. She smiled softly. I don't want to run again, but I don't want you hurt. He reached over, placing his hand over hers. I've been hurt before, he said, but this is worth it. That night, a stone hit the window. Jason went outside fast, ready to fight, but found nothing but footprints in the dirt. He followed them to the edge of the field and stopped. Lena's small drawing was pinned to a tree with a stick. It showed 3 figures holding hands. One human, one tall alien woman, one little girl underneath in shaky letters. It said on home. Jason took the picture down and smiled. Let them whisper, let them hate. He'd seen the truth. The bond they had wasn't cursed, it was stronger than fear, and soon, the whole village would see it too. Jason stood in the middle of the village square, the morning sun rising behind him like fire. His clothes were dusty, his boots cracked, but his voice was strong. I want to speak to the council, he said, loud enough for all to hear. Aliens stopped what they were doing. Vendors paused. Children hushed. Even the wind seemed to slow. No one, especially not a human, ever asked to speak before the village elders. But Jason didn't care, not today. Yulari stood behind him, her hands shaking, her heart pounding. She had begged him not to do this, not to make a scene. But Jason had looked her in the eyes and said, if we want them to stop treating you like dirt, we have to stand in the sun. Now the sun was rising, and everyone was watching. The village guards tried to block him, but the elders arrived before things could turn ugly. 5 robed figures walked forward, old, proud, and cold as stone, the lead elder. A tall female with sharp gray eyes stepped forward. You are the human, she said flatly. You dare demand audience? Jason nodded once. I do. Speak then, she said, folding her arms. And be brief. Jason turned slowly to face the gathering crowd. I am not here to steal from you, he began. I'm not here to insult your ways or break your rules. I'm here because I met someone who didn't deserve the pain you gave her. Murmurs spread through the crowd, eyes now flicking toward Yulari. Jason pointed back toward her, his voice louder. She raised a daughter alone, worked like an animal, begged no one, and still stayed kind. You call her cursed, but I've seen more strength in her than in any war leader. And his voice slowed for a moment. I want to marry her. The square went dead silent. Yulari gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth. Even Lena, watching from a corner, froze with wide eyes. The elders looked stunned, then angry. The lead elder stepped forward. You would bind yourself to her? A shameful widow? A defiler of bloodlines? Jason didn't flinch. Yes. You insult our traditions, she hissed. You spit on generations of law. Jason's reply was sharp. Then your laws are broken. She did nothing wrong, he said, pointing at Yulari again. She loved, she lost, she survived, and you turned your backs. The elder's eyes narrowed. And what would you have us do, human? Jason stepped closer. Let her speak for herself. Gasps echoed across the crowd. No cursed woman had ever been a loud voice before the elders. Jason raised his hand. If she says she doesn't want me, I'll leave and never return. But if she says yes, then you will hear it. And you will know she is not alone anymore. The lead elder stared at Yllari, then gave a sharp nod. Speak, she said coldly. Your voice is granted once. Yllari stepped forward slowly, her legs trembling like soft branches in the wind. She looked at the crowd, so many faces who once ignored her. She looked at Jason, standing tall, unmoving, eyes locked on hers. Then she looked down at Lena, hiding behind a pillar, staring up with hope. I never asked for pity, Yllari began softly. I never begged for love. I raised my daughter with my hands, and sometimes with my tears. But this man, this human, he looked at me and didn't see filth. He saw a person, she said louder now. He saw a mother, a woman, a heart still beating. She turned to Jason, tears in her eyes. And if he still wants me, then I will stand beside him. The silence was deafening, until a single clap echoed through the square. It came from a young alien boy, then another, then more. Soon half the crowd was clapping, some even nodding, but the elders did not clap. The lead elder raised her hand, silencing the noise. You have made a choice, she said to Yllari. You will not be punished, but do not expect our blessings. Yllari nodded, her voice steady now. I don't need your blessing to be whole. The elders turned and left without another word. Jason reached out, gently taking Yllari's hand in his. Lena ran toward them, laughing, her arms open wide. Jason knelt and scooped her up with one arm, holding Yllari close with the other, and right there, in front of a village that once hated her, a new family stood tall, unafraid, unashamed. The fire had been fierce, but love had walked through it, still burning, still standing. Dark clouds gathered over the hills of Zareen 5, thick and heavy like the silence that followed the elders' exit. The villagers returned to their homes, their stalls, their corners, but something had shifted. Not everyone was angry anymore, some whispered quietly. Some smiled when they thought no one was watching, but not all were pleased. From behind locked doors and shadowed halls, hatred still boiled like poison under calm water. Jason, Yllari, and Lena returned to the old farmhouse. Lena ran ahead, laughing again, her hair glowing faintly in the coming stormlight. Jason walked beside Yllari, still holding her hand. Neither spoke, but their silence was full of things that didn't need words. Until Jason stopped at the broken gate and turned toward her. Do you regret it? He asked, voice low. Yllari looked up at him, her eyes soft but strong. No, she whispered. I've never been more afraid, but never more alive. That night the storm broke. Rain pounded the roof like falling stones, and thunder roared across the fields. Jason worked fast, sealing the cracks in the windows. Lighting the solar lamp, Yllari kept Lena close, wrapping her in warm blankets. But the real storm was not the one outside. A loud knock shook the wooden door, followed by angry voices. Jason grabbed a tool and stood near the entrance. Ready, come out, human, a voice shouted. You've brought shame to this land, another voice growled. Give us the widow and her brat, we'll deal with them ourselves. Yllari froze. Her breath catching, Jason stepped forward, voice firm. You touch this door, and I swear, you'll regret it. The voices laughed, not scared, not yet. You think your kind matters here? Someone yelled. You're just a traveler. And she's filth? Jason's blood boiled, but he didn't open the door. Instead, he called out louder. Come and look in her eyes. Then say that again. Come and see your daughter's drawings. Come and see what real love looks like. But they didn't come. Instead, stones hit the house, smashing one of the outer walls. Jason pulled Yllari and Lena into the back room, shielding them with his body. Outside, feet stomped through the wet ground. Shadows moved in the stormlight. Jason grabbed a broken iron rod, his grip tight. I'll keep you safe, he whispered, I promise. Yllari touched his arm. We'll protect each other. Suddenly, voices outside shouted again, but this time not in anger. Someone screamed, Stop! That's enough! Another shouted, He's not hurting anyone, leave them alone. Jason paused, confused. Then he heard more voices, different ones. Rising in defense, footsteps running, pushing back against the angry crowd. Jason peeked through the window and saw them, villagers standing between the mob and the house. 2 women, 1 young man, and even the fruit vendor who once mocked him. They formed a wall, arms raised, blocking the attackers. "You call her cursed?" The vendor shouted. "She raised a daughter while we stood and watched." The young man pointed at Jason. "He fixed the water pipe behind my shop. He didn't ask for coin, he asked nothing." The attackers hesitated, surprised by the resistance, then slowly, one by one, they backed away. The storm still raged above, but the crowd began to break apart. By morning, the house still stood, shaken but whole. Mud covered the floor, and broken planks lay scattered. But Lena slept safe in her mother's arms, and Jason sat near the doorway, guarding them through the night when the sun finally rose. Villagers arrived not with stones but with tools. One brought nails, another brought a window frame. The fruit vendor came with food fresh and warm. They didn't speak much, only nodded as they worked. Jason helped, Yalari helped. Even Lena handed out small nails with pride. No one called her cursed anymore. Later that evening, as the sun set behind the repaired farmhouse, Jason stood outside staring at the land that once rejected them. Yalari stepped beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Why did they help us?" she asked, still unsure. Jason smiled faintly. "Because hate is loud, but love is stronger when someone dares to stand first." And in the fading stormlight he knew they hadn't just survived the storm, they had changed it. The sky over Zareen 5 glowed soft pink and gold. The storm was gone, leaving behind fresh air and calm wind. Birds chirped in the trees again, and the dust had settled across the fields like a warm blanket. Inside the old farmhouse, the light poured in through clean windows. Jason sat on the step, holding a steaming cup of tea. Yalari stood behind him, her hand resting on his shoulder, and Lena ran through the grass outside, laughing, barefoot free. The house had changed. New roof tiles, patched walls, and even a fresh coat of paint brought by a kind stranger. But it wasn't the house that mattered. It was the way the village looked at it now. No longer a cursed place, no longer avoided. Now it was something else entirely. A place of hope. The same vendor who once spit insults now came every morning to drop off fruit. An older alien woman who once crossed the street to avoid Yalari now stopped to talk and offer bread. No one said it out loud, but the truth was clear. Yalari had endured. Jason had stood beside her, and together, they had won something far greater than acceptance. They had earned respect. That afternoon, Jason knelt in the garden he had dug with his own hands. He pulled weeds while Lena helped him water the tiny flowers growing in rows. Yalari walked out holding a small piece of folded cloth. "Jason," she said softly, "I need to show you something." He stood and wiped his hands. Curious, she handed him the cloth. Inside was a silver necklace. Dusty but beautiful. "It belonged to Darren," she said. "The human I once loved." Jason looked at it carefully, then looked at her. "You kept it all these years?" She nodded. "Even after they called me cursed. Even when I had to sell everything else." Jason held the necklace gently, as if it were made of glass. "I want you to keep it," she said. "Not because you're replacing him, but because you gave me a future." Jason placed the necklace in his pocket, his voice low. "And you gave me something I didn't know I needed." That evening, they stood together under the large tree at the edge of the village. Villagers gathered slowly, some bringing food, others candles or flowers. There was no music. No fancy robes, no priests, just simple words and honest hearts. Jason turned to Yalari and took her hands. "I never planned to come here," he said, "and I never expected to find you. But now, I can't imagine leaving without you." Yalari looked into his eyes, tears gently forming. "For years, I thought I was nothing but a shadow," she whispered. "But you saw me, and gave me light again." Jason smiled. "You were never a shadow. You were the fire that refused to go out." Lena stood between them, holding both their hands, her smile brighter than any star. And when the villagers began to clap, not out of duty but out of joy, the sound echoed across the fields like a new beginning. A real family had been born, not by blood, but by choice, and that choice had changed everything. Later that night, they returned home as a family. The house was quiet, warm, and full of soft laughter. Jason carried Lena to bed, tucking her in gently. Yalari stood in the doorway watching him, her heart full in a way it had never been before. No longer alone, no longer afraid, she walked to the window. Looking out at the stars once, those stars reminded her of what she had lost. Now they reminded her of what she had found. A man who saw her pain and didn't run. A village that learned to change. A future that felt possible again. Jason stepped beside her. Placing an arm around her waist, she leaned into him, her head resting on his chest. Neither spoke, they didn't need to, because the silence was no longer empty. It was filled with everything they had built, together, and far above them, across the night sky of Zareen 5. A single star shimmered brighter than the rest, as if the universe itself had stopped for a moment, to witness the story of a widow once forgotten, a little girl once starving, and the human who gave them both a reason to believe again